Hello everyone, Ben Woodruff here, and this video I'm going to be sharing with you the worst eagle story ever. The worst lie or tall tale told around the internet and around the world about eagles. Now, I am a falconer, a wildlife educator, and I've helped in wildlife rehabilitation. I've trained a number of eagles, bald eagles and golden eagles, both for education and for falconry. I've been passionate about eagles my whole life. I go out and I study them in the field. I watch their nesting behaviors. I watch them hunt. And so this is common biological knowledge, but I also have firsthand experience that this story is not true. But people keep sending it to me, and I keep person by person telling them it's not true. So this is it. This is the worst, most unacceptable story that gets spread around the internet about eagles. Now, I'm also going to share in other videos the second and third most unacceptable, but this is the worst. Here's how it goes. Well, eagles, they grow and they find a mate. And of course, eagles mate for life. They're paired off and they live happily. They raise their young. And then after a number of years, their young grow up and fly away. And now these adult eagles are, 40, 45, 50 years old now. And once they're that age and their young fly away, they die. They just die. And the only way they don't die is if they leave their mate for a time and fly off to the top of a cold and lonely mountain alone. And there, and here's where it's, first thing, there they have to rip out their own feathers. They bite and they pull out their own feathers, and it's bleeding and it's painful. And then the feathers start growing in, and it's a painful process as those quills pierce their way through the skin and they grow new feathers. And their feathers are a new color, and they have a beautiful white head and neck that they didn't have before. And they also, and here's where there's two versions. The first version is they rip out their own talons, and they bang their beak against a rock, and their beak gets bashed off of their face. The other version is that their talons and their beak just fall off. And it's very painful, and they're hungry. And then they're sitting there in the cold, shivering with no feathers as their feathers grow in on top of this mountain. And they grow in a new beak, and they grow in new talons. And then when they've undergone this great change, and now they look different with a white head and neck, and then they fly back to their mate. And if they go through this change, that they have to choose to accept and go through, they'll live another 45 or 50 years. This is such a stupid story. There's not an ounce of truth in it. And people keep telling to me, so what's the truth? Let me tell you the truth. So first of all, eagles, a good long life for an eagle be 27 to maybe even 30 years in the wild. That would be a really good long life. In captivity, there have been some eagles with a healthy diet who have lived up to 50, but that's extreme. It's not, you live to 50 and then if you go through a change, you live to be 100. No, okay? Second of all, they're like, after a number of years, the young eagles grow up and fly away. No. Mature eagles, around 5 or 6 years old, might seek a mate. And then they typically, if there's enough food, will try to hopefully have babies every year. They usually only have one survive, maybe two, but that's rare. Those eagles, within a month and a half, 2 months, their body, their skeleton is full-sized. Another month and a half or so, the feathers grow in, and they learn how to fly. They leave that year. They're not like, for years I stay with my parents. No, not at all, okay? So this whole empty nester thing, relating it to humans, not true. Now, for an eagle to leave and rip out its feathers and have them grow back in a painful way, no. Every single year, eagles lose all of their feathers and they grow in a new set. Now, it's a couple at a time in a row, okay? So it's not like they're ever bald and naked. They're just growing new feathers in. It is not painful at all to them. They do not have to rip them out. Now, the lie that, once they go through this change, they have a beautiful white head and neck. No. So how it works is, eagles, new set of feathers every year. Their first 5 years, they have a different color phase. First year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year phase. In the case of a bald eagle, the 5th year, 6th year is when they get their white head and neck. The next year they re-get that. The next year they re-get that. And they'll keep getting that new set. It's not something that only happens once when they're 45 or 50. Not true at all, okay? Now, the beak and the talons, okay? The coating of talons and the coating of the beak are keratin, like your fingernails, okay? But underneath the keratin coating of a talon is bone. It's a claw. You can't just rip the thing off and have it grow back. The beak, that is your face. So the idea of an eagle's beak falling off or them bashing their head against a rock and having it come off, that's like losing this chunk of your skull. If this part of your skull and your jaw just, and what, you have a big gaping hole there? No, a beak is not a separate object. It is part of the skull that happens to be coated with keratin. So I understand that this story was invented as an allegory. It's for parents who, you get married young, you have a bunch of kids, the kids grow up and you've spent so much effort being a good parent that now you're like, wait, who am I? Who's this other person I'm married to? And the idea is, if you want to have a successful marriage as an empty nester, you need to understand who you are, and then you can be a good partner post kids leaving. Fine. But the story is complete, unacceptable fabrication. Please do not perpetuate this laughable, shameful, and ridiculous lie unless you say, now this actually isn't true. It's an allegory. It's a lesson for us. You're going to do that? Cool. Otherwise, please, let's cut off this ridiculous story because it's not true.